Hey guys, what's going on? So I thought that today I would do a review of my bike, the CBR600F 2011 to 2013 generation. It's based off the Honda Hornet. The chassis and engine are identical, even like the wheels and subframe and everything, all the same. What they basically did was add some fairings, some clip-ons, and call it a new bike. Oh, and then the mirrors are now on the fairing. Okay, so to start with, I did buy this bike second-hand, so I don't know exactly what they cost new. I mean, when I got it, it was the beginning of the year. They already stopped making the bike, so I don't know what the new price was. I think it was about 85,000 Rand plus minus. I picked mine up for dirt cheap, but I really did get a good deal, and because it had been dropped to one side, it had been sitting for like 8 months, so it needed a heavy service. So although I did get it for cheap, it was cheap for a reason. Although I fixed it up, I had some contacts, so I got it all cleaned up and everything, and now it's running perfectly. And yeah, I got it for a bargain. But you can pick these things up with about 20,000 Ks for 60,000 or less. Compare that to like a CBR600RR, which is what this engine actually came from. This generation of Hornets and CBR600Fs have an 07 CBR600RR motor. And if you manage to find one with roughly the same mileage, which you really won't because they're all fairly old now, but if you find a 600RR with the same mileage as these bikes, same kind of year model than that, you're going to be paying closer to 100,000 Rand for this bike, depending on where you get it from, how good condition the bike's in, all that. So price-wise, this bike is pretty damn good. When I bought it was completely stock. There had been nothing changed on it. As of now, I've got the LED indicators, the tail tidy, aftermarket exhaust, and a tank pad, if you even want to call that a mod. Haven't done any engine tuning, any performance mods other than the exhaust. And I didn't get the exhaust from Acca or anything. I got it custom made just because it worked out a lot cheaper to get the cat literally cut out with an angle grinder than to buy like a full Acca system or Aero or any of those kind of guys. So yeah, so I mean, I ended up paying, I think, for the exhaust, the actual silencer, I paid about 3.5. It's a place called Race Tech in Boksburg. They do custom exhausts, their own stock exhaust setup, all that kind of stuff. Great job. So the exhaust cost me 3.5 for the silencer, and I think I paid 1.5 too for the decat, which is literally just cut it out, put some pipes in, put a loop in to account for the back pressure. And it's running perfectly. I haven't found any loss in power. If anything, it's a lot smoother with the power delivery. It's not as jerky, especially in the lower revs. So I must say, the bike feels amazing. But aside from my personal bike, back to the general stuff about this bike. You'll find that it's a bit heavier than your average 600, especially in the sports class. I mean, your average, like the CBR600RR, I think weighs about, what's it, 175, 180 kilos max. So it's around about there, 175, 180. I'll put an annotation now probably. And this bike is 206 kilos wet. Fairly heavy. I mean, that's about what a Fireblade weighs. So, you know, 1000cc super bike weighs as much as this, and this has a lot less power. So you think, you know, this thing's not going to move, but 0 to 100, depending on which video you find on YouTube and how good you are at pulling off the line fast, I've managed to get one of about 3.5, 3.6 seconds. I'm no pro rider, so I think you could easily do a 3.2 in the right hands. But yeah, so these things are quick. They have a top speed of about 250 k's an hour. I haven't tried that myself, but I've seen videos on YouTube of people who have, and they've gotten to the 250 mark pretty easily. Okay, power-wise, it's got 101 horsepower, to be exact, and about 67 Newton meters of torque. The bike is pretty maneuverable. Look, it's not easy. I've ridden a 600RR, and I can tell you for a fact that it's not as maneuverable as that. It's not easy to flick over as the 600RR, but I don't struggle as per se. I mean, when I've taken it, higher speeds around the 160s, 170s, and that, it did take a little bit of force to put down. You don't actually find many of these bikes around. I mean, in Joburg, I've only ever seen one. I mean, I've seen a few pictures, classified ads, and all that. But I've seen one, and it wasn't even on the road, it was parked. Ooh, hello. Nice bike. Oh, that's a beast. The bike is very, very quiet when you buy it stock. Like under 5,000-6,000 revs, you're not really going to hear much. As you probably heard, mine isn't stock. It's very not stock. It's got a full decat system on it, so a little bit of extra power, but that wasn't even why I did. I just wanted to hear my bike more. This little windscreen here does nothing. I mean, I'm at 80, okay, I don't feel much, but that's not saying a lot, because most naked, like if I stand up, I'm not feeling much, so this goes to show, 80 k's an hour, you're not going to feel much on any bike. But I've ridden this thing fairly quickly, and as soon as you get past 120, getting to 130, this thing becomes ridiculous with the wind. Like, even when you tuck in, and I'm a fairly tall guy, I'm just under 6 foot, so I'm fairly tall, and it just does nothing. Like, I recently rode the MT10, and I must say, that little windscreen thing that they got on the front there works wonders, because when I was riding that thing at 160, I did not feel any wind. I was completely surprised. I mean, there's a bit of wind on my shoulders and that, but it's better than what my bike does, and my bike is a full fairing bike. Really in the middle of the road. Thank you. Let's make a U up ahead. I never got an exhaust system like from Acura or anything. I didn't try that. I tried a local made one, and I couldn't tell the difference. I mean, at the slightest amount, there's a tiny bit of a deepness to it. But if I revved it beside my stock motorcycle, because I took videos before, I didn't hear a difference. I don't know if that's everything. When I've looked on YouTube, I've also seen kind of the same thing when people just put slip-ons, doesn't make a difference. And I think it's because Honda put a lot of the baffle in the catalytic converter, which isn't a bad thing, because if you really like the look of the stock exhaust, you can put it on with an aftermarket with just a decats in the middle, and then it should sound a lot better, and then you can save a lot of money because the silence is going to be a fair bit. Reliability. It's a Honda, so of course it's reliable. It's one of the most reliable bikes you can buy. It's another reason why I went for Honda instead of Yamaha, Suzuki, and there's nothing wrong with those bikes. But especially when you're buying second-hand, you don't know how the guy before you treated it. Hondas tend to be fairly bulletproof. I mean, even when you find a knocked up, like CBR600 or Fireblade kind of thing, they still work quite well. I mean, I've ridden a few with high mileage, like 40-50,000 Ks, and they felt pretty damn good. A friend of mine has had a 600RR and a Fireblade. He's taken both of them past 50,000 Ks, and he's never even had to do a valve check on it. He always skips his valve check at the normal 24,000 Ks and does them at 50,000 just to be on the safe side. And each time he's done the check, he's found that they were in spec. Comfort-wise, I've ridden the MT10, and that's very comfortable. It's a naked bike. I've ridden a KLR 650. I've ridden Honda Transalps. I've also ridden a few superbikes, GS6R 750, Fireblade, CBR600RR, the general stuff. I've ridden an R1 Big Bang. Most uncomfortable bike I've ridden to date is that Big Bang. I mean, you sit so far back, your arms are so stretched out and you're facing down that it just feels like you're supporting yourself only with your wrists. Maybe I was holding it wrong, but That's how it felt to me. Look, great bike, feels awesome and everything, but not comfy. This bike, although it looks very sporty, is very comfortable. I can't really find any comfort issues with this bike. The seat is very comfortable. I've had my girlfriend on the back with me several times. Because it's slightly sloped down, she says she doesn't like riding on it for very long, but she's not accustomed to bikes, so she's not, she would be a lot worse off on a super bike. I mean, there's nothing worse than being a passenger on a super bike, I don't think. You know, your legs by your ears and curled over into a little ball. But yeah, comfort-wise, this thing is top notch. You can't get much better unless you go for a fully upright bike. And I must say, it's a good combination, because when I want to be sporty, I can tuck down a bit and be sporty. But when I want to be comfortable, I can sit a little bit more forward. I mean, there's a fair bit of seat flex, so I can sit a lot further back and then lean down on this bike. About that power thing again, I mean, that should be testament that this thing has a lot of power in it. And it's all manageable. I mean, you don't find that you'll go over a bump and like accidentally twist the throttle and feel yourself jerk it all around. The brakes, I've never had to use them to their extremes, but I've done some hard braking and I've managed to lock it up. So I must have gone all the way through and they felt good to me. I mean, I've always stopped in time, always felt confident. They're not spongy like some of the bikes coming out today. Like the G6R750, I must say. When I rode that thing, although it has great brakes, like you pull the brakes, they feel amazing and they stop you well, but I could pull it almost all the way to the handlebar. And for someone like me, you only need 2-finger brakes, so I don't feel like you need 4 unless you're in an emergency. I was kind of crushing my other 2 fingers when I was braking fairly hard. Now, it's not the end of the world. You can't push the lever further forward, but then you have to really reach to grab the lever in the first place, and you know, it's like you shouldn't have to fix the problem by moving it away. As far as fuel consumption goes, I'm averaging about 4.5 liters per 100 on this, which is pretty good. You know, I looked at the G6R750, the one I rode, and according to results I found online, I mean, look, this thing was supposed to be like 6.4 liters per 100, 6.8 kind of thing average, so I don't know, maybe if you're riding this thing really hard and only doing like, you know, canyon riding and that, then maybe you'd find that you're getting those kinds of fuel consumptions. Like I've found that I've gotten about 5.5 when I've been riding really badly, like, you know, just gunning it all the time, revving a lot. One thing I should note, I found a lot of people dislike the Yamaha R6. For like one of the main reasons I found that people dislike the Yamaha R6 is for the fact that it, when you have to take the fairings off to do any work on it, it's a nightmare because it has 3 separate pieces per side. Something to note, on this bike we have 1, 2, 3 to get the one side off because the front fairing is split up in half. So you still have 3 fairings, much like the R6. So if that's something that's going to really bug you, although you shouldn't have to be stripping it often, I mean, you can do an oil change the oil filter, all of that without having to strip anything off this bike. The only reason I stripped it at all was to get my fairings resprayed. Oh, and to put the indicators in. And even though when I put the indicators in, I only had to take out the far right panel, the one of the furthest outside, the white panel on my bike. And this one. I can't get over how great the power delivery is on this bike. I mean, look, I rode a 600RR, and to compare them together, because they are essentially the same engine, that thing revs about 2,000 RPM more than mine, otherwise same sort of bike. And also it's more sporty, lighter, all that, but I found that when I was revving that thing, it was a lot more dead in the low RPMs compared to mine. So like, you know, below 5,000 I had a lot more torque, which is right, because the Honda did say that for this bike they revamped that engine and put the torque down low, which is what you want as a commuter, because this is what this predominantly is. It's a commuter. Okay, as far as electronics go on this bike, it's very basic. It's not a ride-by-wire throttle. It doesn't have ABS. There is an ABS model with combined ABS, so that's Honda's combined ABS system. Otherwise, electronics is not ride-by-wire. It's a normal cable throttle, or it's cable driven. So you're not going to get any rider modes of this thing. It is a basic motorcycle. It's made to be a budget bike. That said, it was made in Italy, so that's where the styling comes from. If you're wondering why it doesn't look like your typical Honda, well, Italian made, designed, styled, whatever. Then we get back to the other electronics. So it has all your trip meter stuff, your fuel consumption, which should be standard on all bikes. I don't know why not every bike has a fuel gauge now. Speaking of which, I did forget to mention there's a fuel gauge there just above the engine temperature. It doesn't give you an ambient temperature though, which would be nice, but not in the world. The tack is a little bar tack that goes around the top. I've gotten used to it. It took me a while at first because it's right at the top, so you kind of got to look for it. It's a little bit further from the speeder than you'd expect. And with this whole display, if it's very bright outside and the sun's behind you, I've noticed that it can be a little bit difficult to see the display actually. Here comes some noise. If you're looking to buy this bike, a few things I recommend. Exhaust is a must. That exhaust looks beautiful. You can Google pictures of this bike and you'll see what the stock exhaust looks like. It really is a sexy looking thing. But it's damn quiet. To wake up the whole neighborhood. And other than that, hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. Bye.